This is where forces loyal to Muammar Gaddafi reportedly attempted to retake the town of AlJazeera from rebel hands. This amateur video, which cannot be verified, appears to show the chaos as protesters ran for cover. Witnesses described intense gun battles between residents and security forces. Libyan state television showed pro-government demonstrations in Tripoli, as well as the town of Zlitan, several kilometers to the east. Both are Gaddafi strongholds. But anti-government protests continued elsewhere, including around the capital itself. After Friday prayers in the AlJazeera district of eastern Tripoli, people took to the streets, calling for the Libyan leader and his inner circle to go. Heavy machine gun fire could be heard as pro-Gaddafi security forces fired tear gas to disperse the crowds. And on the outskirts of the major oil port of Ras Lanuf, heavy artillery fire was heard. The rebels claim to have taken control of the town's airport, and according to reports, they plan to follow up with an attack on a nearby army base. Meanwhile, in the opposition-held town of Benghazi in the eastern part of the country, after Friday prayers, thousands of anti-government protesters repeated their demands that Gaddafi step down.
The people don't want you. The people are bored with you. 42 years is enough. Go away and leave us alone. This message to you is from all of us. Leave our land. Enough blood has already been spilt.
And amid claims and counterclaims, reports came in of Gaddafi's forces bombing an arms depot outside Benghazi with many casualties. It appears that Gaddafi's fight back is well underway. Camille El Hassani, Al Jazeera.
Our correspondent Anita McNaught is in the capital, Tripoli, and has been allowed limited access by the Libyan government to send us this update.
Well, we travelled for more than an hour through the streets of Tripoli today after Friday prayers when we were aware there were plans to stage some kind of a protest. But Tripoli itself, a city almost completely locked down, electronic communications cut off for the previous 24 hours, shops shut, practically no people on the street, and a very, very heavy security presence, police and army at major intersections near the two areas we wanted to see, Souq Shumar and AlJazeera. Now, fellow journalists actually were there when there was an attempt at a protest in both those places, but both times the security presence was so heavy that if anyone appeared who looked like they were a protester, they were immediately outnumbered and surrounded. Further to the east of the city, in the area of Zawiya, where there has been a rebel holdout against the Libyan government said this afternoon that they had retaken that area, then qualified it by saying there were still pockets of fighting, but isolated, and we understand that fighting has continued into the evening.
Now, earlier we spoke to Hamad, a police officer in Bisher, which is 20 kilometers west of Ajdabiya. He says violent clashes continue in Al-Zawiya.
In terms of casualties in Zawiya, the latest death toll we have is 50 who have been killed by pro-Gaddafi forces. These figures are from early this evening. As for the wounded, there are around 300, but many more are incoming because the fighting continues in some places. So we cannot really confirm the final death toll as the situation is volatile. And I have just received info from the revolutionaries. They say that they have taken over the city of Ras Lanuf.
Now, in Benghazi itself, protesters gathered after Friday prayers in a show of strength for those still under government control in Tripoli. Tony Berkeley has sent us this report.
Neither the weather nor Gaddafi's threats could stop them massing in the centre of Benghazi for Friday prayers. Tens of thousands gathered in defiance of their hated leader and in support of those still under government control in Tripoli. In the city where the uprising began, the cleric called for Gaddafi to step down, the people to stand up, and those with guns to come forward and fight for the liberation of the capital. These people remain resolute and determined, but that alone is not enough. They need something more. If anything, Gaddafi seems stronger and bolder than he was at the beginning. So the question is, what next? And what if the Libyan leader refuses to go? Will this civil uprising turn into a civil war? Many say that won't happen, but international rhetoric has increased. Direct pressure has slowed. Some feel the momentum of the uprising has slowed with it.
Gaddafi is in hiding. He is not representing anybody any longer. He is a coward and he won't challenge the people, and it is only a matter of time.
People here know Gaddafi has weathered international storms and sanctions before, most notably after the downing of Pan Am 103 more than 20 years ago, and there are still real concerns in free Libya.
We need to think of the life of the Libyans first as a priority, so we are asking for the help of the international community under the UN flag.
From the streets, though, there are no doubts. Those in Benghazi seem totally committed to the fight, wherever it may lead.
Let him drop bombs on us. We're not afraid of anything. We're not even afraid of his mercenaries.
Gaddafi has used that aerial threat a number of times in the last few days, and control of the skies is essential to complete liberation.
We know that this guy will commit a massacre in Tripoli today, and if the international community doesn't move, then it will be on their conscience.
Another victim of the rebellion is paraded through the streets of the city. It's almost a daily occurrence. The pain is still being felt here. Ahmed Sati was a 51-year-old civil servant who has just died from a bullet wound sustained during the demonstrations. His children lost a loving father and a man who wanted democracy. Even though Gaddafi is still in power, they don't feel his death was in vain.
My father did not die for nothing. He and the rest died for our beloved country.
With the death toll now said to have surpassed 1,000, the heart of the revolution is suffering. And throughout Libya today, there is still uncertainty, there is still anger, and there is still death. Tony Bertley, AlJazeera, Benghazi.
Now, the US State Department has confirmed humanitarian supplies have been delivered to Tunisia to help refugees who fled from Libya. This from spokesman PJ Crowley.
There is an international airlift in progress, which has significantly helped in easing the crisis caused by the influx of migrants into Tunisia. These C-130 aircraft today are carrying humanitarian supplies. We anticipate that tomorrow they will return and participate in the flow of migrants from Tunisia back to Egypt.
Clashes have broken out between security forces and protesters in the Egyptian city of Alexandria. The demonstrators have reportedly surrounded the state security headquarters and are attempting to set the building alight. Unconfirmed reports say at least one person has been killed and 2 wounded. Local media are reporting that security forces in the building are shredding sensitive documents and personnel ID cards. Now to Iraq, and anti-government forces there are getting louder. On Friday, thousands of protesters rallied in the central Tahrir Square in the capital, Baghdad. Fed up with poor salaries and bad public services, they want Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki's government to shape up or go. Al Jazeera's Jane Araf reports.
Iraq's government may be just a few months old, but already these Iraqis want a new one. "We're sorry we elected you," they chant. And the symbol of last year's elections, now a subject of derision. Among the crowd, Muntadhir Zaidi, the man who so famously threw his shoe at U.S. President George Bush 2 years ago.
I believe and I'm very optimistic by the brave Iraqi people who will demonstrate every Friday, and this is a continuing force that will shake the Iraqi government and have them answer our demands.
And the first demand, he says, is to end the American presence in Iraq. It was clear Prime Minister